Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Barbara Hartman, yes, one of my hosts, has once again caused me to arise and get ready for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. I do feel a tad under the weather, though. Much better. Thank you for allowing me to regain my power sources. It's not easy to battle vermin like the Dogman when you feel quite weak. Without further ado, it is time for Barbara Hartman and myself to take a walk into the darkness. My creatures of the night, yes, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. We once again have Barb Hartman in the house to help us figure out what is occurring with the Dogman. And I would also please like to inform everybody my page is still under construction. Yes, I will be putting out consistent content, but I am very confused to some of the guidelines as to what I'm supposed to be following. So bear with me here. But Barb, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, thanks for having me again. And oh my gosh, this is crazy. What's going on, with you? I'm so sorry because it's so confusing.
Yeah, it's all
And
good, but
terrible.
we're here right now just rolling
Yeah.
and moving forward, right? So that's all I can really
Yeah, all
do is,
you
I
can
guess, take
do.
the slap on the wrist
Yeah.
information provided to me and mold
Yeah,
myself
yeah.
and evolve. So
Right. Oh gosh. Mm.
what's new your way? You've been diving into anything interesting Dogman topic? I've seen some of the Bigfoot stuff going on around your property, and I've been helping you out with some of
Yeah.
those. So that's pretty
Yeah.
intriguing right there. But anything
Yeah,
else out of the
thanks.
ordinary?
No, nothing. I have not seen anything. Now I do get some photos occasionally that people will say, "Oh, that looks like there's a snout or a dog man," but I haven't seen really anything that I can say for sure. And I think I did tell you that the only thing that we ever experienced here, it was actually my husband, is we have a compost pile, and one night he had taken some like vegetable, whatever, stuff up to it, and there was something standing there, but it was all fours, and was feeding, and then it just when it like sensed him, it ran, and he said it just ran faster. He couldn't believe, like, he's never seen anything run that fast. And I'm like, are you talking about like almost like a supernatural? Because he's not really like into all of that, But I'm like, are you talking about like from a supernatural like standpoint? And he's like, well, I don't know, maybe, because he said it ran so fast. And he said he didn't know if it was canine or feline. It was just a black, like very large kind of of an animal, So, but that's all, we've had. So,
Gee,
yep.
well, that's enough right there, though, eh? I mean,
Yeah. So I don't know.
that's so creepy. There's definitely some really interesting and intriguing stuff occurring, and hopefully more
Yeah.
people will sit down and engage with each other and really try to figure out what's going on. You know
Mm-hmm.
how it is, though. Some of
Yep.
us in this community do like to act like children, so we don't advance ourselves as much as we really could
Yeah.
if everyone would sit down and, just play in the same sandbox kindly. But we'll get
Mm-hmm.
there
Right,
someday,
right.
sooner than later, hopefully, correct? So,
Yeah. Because the more that I get into this, just the more questions that I have. When I first thought, because my thing is, like I said, my thing is more, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and I thought it was just a flesh and blood, a big undiscovered ape, maybe Gigantopithecus, I don't know, but now having them live around me and kind of interacting with them, no, they're definitely not just that. I'm not sure. I tend to think that they're part human, and I agree with the DNA study, but I don't know for sure. And every gosh, at least once a week, I'm like, now what in the world? What was that all about? So, yep, we are certainly in a exciting, curious field, aren't we?
no, that's 100%. And it is always really interesting and good to link up with people that have some quality information as to what's occurring and also some quality hypothesis and theories, because we both know, again, unfortunately, there's just a ton of misinformation out there and
Mhm.
just AI being pushed like crazy as real images. And
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes our community is falling apart at the wheels. We're leaking some
Yeah.
oil, but then other times we're definitely achieving some good things. So.
Yeah, yeah. I think I just wish, like you said, I wish that everybody could just kind of like maybe stay in their own lane. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
And like, you believe what you believe, and then I'm going to believe what I believe. And if
Hmm.
something, and I might come over to you know what I mean? I might agree with you in 6 months, if depending on, what I find in my research or what I'm actually experiencing. I shouldn't even say just research, but that seems like a hard thing for some, for some people. So
Yeah, and that's
anyway.
something I always say to my little brother too, and I encourage anyone. I mean, some of my really good friends, we have plenty of different views on things, but at the end of
Hmm.
the day, people should be able to sit down and have cordial conversations and not have
Absolutely.
that change somebody's opinion of somebody. Yeah, I mean, there's no need to be upset and things. That's what conversation's about. So no, that's
Right.
why even in what we're doing right now, it's super important to be able to just ask questions and
Mhm.
figure out things that are occurring. That's how I learn. I'm a very visual, hands-on, and also I ask questions and
Mhm.
do my own research and such to learn. But sometimes I feel like people take it as, oh, questions. Why do you ask so many questions? Do you ever stop asking questions? No, I'm a journalist. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Like,
That's right,
what?
right. Yeah, and I mean, and if you have questions, you want them answered, because that is something that I have always been accused of. Like, why are you asking so many questions? Stop and listen to what I'm saying. But I can't get to the next thing, right, in my thought process until that question is answered. So it is
Yes.
definitely, yeah, it's definitely something.
That's
And I
so
think,
funny.
I think about, and I don't even remember who this person was. They probably may not even be still with us, but my son and I were watching a documentary on Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Oh my gosh, probably 20 years ago. And there was a guy, that was a witness, and said something about this planet that he thought that Bigfoot came from. And the guy seemed like, he was like a little goofy, and the documentary was playing that up too. It was kind of not, didn't do the guy any favors. And my son and I just thought that was, oh, that's so hilarious, what this guy's saying. But now I'm like, I don't know if I believe, I don't know, maybe that is true. I don't even know, so it's just, again, how your thoughts process changes based on what is revealed to you, or what you reveal, in your research, or your looking for evidence and whatnot. So it's it's pretty, you got to keep an open mind to a certain extent, right? That's just what I think.
Very
So
much so. And it's funny you say that, because a lot of people I feel think that mind frames will always stay the same, but I can always verify myself. I mean, there's been definitely different points in time in my life where I felt differently towards a topic than I do now, etc., because I've gained
yes.
maybe more information or
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
decided to delve more into it and figure out what it is that the topic is referring to. And
Hmm.
it's changed like my thoughts. So an example, which will lead us into what we're going to dive into, is,
Yeah.
well, I used to pretty much nothing's 100%, but I was close to like 100%. And even Jody was explaining this to me about how, he felt the same way, that the LBL massacre had really occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fast forward, and especially with Jody, because Jody was down there, researching, he had actually
Mm-hmm.
said himself he'll never go back down there, meaning he knows in his mind that he's pretty much figured out a ton of as to what's going on, that the LBL area is a massive hunting reservoir, meaning
Mm-hmm.
there's a ton of animals and wildlife up there in general.
Mm-hmm.
So predators are going to come in there. And also, we really don't know what type of predators were, again, released in this game reserve as well. And we do know at a point in time, people did own large cats and exotic animals that they really shouldn't have. And people did let them go. And they have been spotted all across the world. But also
Right.
in the LBL, there's a ton of unfortunate poaching and hunting accidents that have kind of, well, been covered up to look at something that it's really not. So it's ironic because a lot of times cover ups are meant to look like not potential dogman attacks, but then other times, in this instance, there was a hunter recently that had gone down there and was believed to have potentially been attacked by a dogman, but Jody was really breaking it down, as well as some other people, about how he was actually deceased in a hunting accident.
Mm.
And you can see that the highway was right near where he was found. And also there was a
Mm.
campground where a truck could have parked. And also he was
Mm.
dragged up there where an animal wouldn't have dragged up there. And
Mhm.
there was plenty of signs of just local predation as the normal animals, not a quote unquote dog man. Yet, if someone is shot in a hunting accident, that's something that, well, the officials have to pay
Officials?
out. Yes,
Yes.
officials have to pay out a ton of money if that occurs, okay? Yet, if
Mhm.
it's an animal attack or something, it's not
Mhm.
a hunting accident. So now
Mhm.
they kind of cover their butt
Right.
cheeks on that. So that's right there is super interesting. And now,
Yes.
when I was talking to Jessica Jones the other night as well,
Mhm.
and she was talking about one of the targets she had remote viewed, where the teacher that was attacked by what a lot of people believed was a dog man, in actuality, Jessica thinks it was a large cat because that is what she had seen as well, and it had
Oh.
come down from the trees. And also, this leads me back into the LBL thing, because Jody thinks if the massacre did occur, which I agree, that there's a high probability that it was a pair of mountain lions or a mountain lion with her cubs or a pair of
Mhm.
black panthers, because that they could easily dispose of a human family like that. And also, that is large cat behavior to pull bodies and remaining food up into trees,
Yes.
which is the girl was found up, the daughter was
Mhm.
found up in a tree, partially, like, fed on and disemboweled to
Yeah.
an extent. And I'm not saying this couldn't be a cryptid type attack, but what I'm trying to say is this is large cat behavior, okay? And
Yes.
same thing with Brenda Hamilton when she was attacked and then it was said to be stray dogs. No, it was a large cat that attacked her, because same type of prey marks and behavior. And people
Mhm.
don't realize, well, there's no tracks. Well, large cats don't like leaving tracks. They
Mhm.
walk on rocks, they use trees, they use grass, they use logs, because they are really, really aware of trying to leave behind any sort of signs of themselves.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Right.
look at even a cat outside when they use the bathroom, they dig it, bury it all down, and they don't
Mhm.
want to leave signs of themselves. So,
Mm.
if a large
Right.
cat can use a tree, jaguars use trees, panthers, mountain lions, they
Mhm.
all run and jump up into trees and go from tree to tree and pull their prey up there. So,
Yeah.
it's pretty
It's
interesting because a lot of people, like I said, who knows? No one's really ever going to figure out if this LBL massacre occurred. We do know that some of the area was bulldozed and rearranged, which is
yeah.
also a ton of wasted assets for the community
Mhm.
money wise. Yet,
Yeah.
let's be real, that's not really something officials in general ever really seem to be concerned about. I mean, money's wasted very
Mhm.
much all the time.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Definitely in the LBL, definitely there's like wasted opportunity, wasted dollars. Wow.
yes.
Right?
So,
Yeah.
again, it was bulldozed and rearranged, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was a Dogman massacre. It just maybe means they no longer cared about that section of the park
and just bulldozed it all up because they didn't care. I mean, how many times do we see parking lots full of cars that companies have made that just sit there and that they're not being sold, they're rotting away? And how many times do we see community or official vehicles just left to kind of rot away in areas like city
Right.
buses and stuff? So pretty much all I'm saying is we as a people waste money. Okay. So it's not
Yeah.
really that much out of the realm to think that they just bulldozed this area off and there was really no direct reason for it. Yet, sure, maybe there was something that they were trying to cover up in there. But as I read more about the LBL and found out that it was, like I said, a hunting reservoir and spoke with Jody and some other people, it to me just seems kind of like a normal area to an extent. Yet, I don't know. How do you feel about all that?
I can't really say that I have like a concrete opinion. Here we go. Based on I've never been there. I've been researching it only because it's just very, I mean, it's a very interesting place, right? It's very hard to find information if you don't know the right like kind of things to search for. Because I tried it when I started to research it, there really isn't very much out there as far as the nefarious, like, the underbelly, what's going on, because there's a lot of weird stuff. And the whole way that it came about, that people were basically, you know, taken from their homes and forced out, eminent domain. They were not properly compensated, most times, and people that had been families that had been on this land like for generations, and all of a sudden they're forced off, and then and it's supposed to be like for the good of all, but these things never materialized what they were promised. There's also a lot of I'd say, like kind of like bloody battles with the Civil War, terrible atrocities with Native Americans, associated with that area. So I wonder if there is some sort of just a general, I don't know, like I don't want to say like a curse, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. But the other thing is that some of the people that have had um, encounters there that are my friends, and I really like these guys, and they seem very believable, like that's what they think they saw, and so I don't know, but even so, even the people that have had, and women that have had encounters, they still don't know exactly what they're dealing with, right? We just don't know. I think what you and Jody are talking about, that's entirely plausible, that could have been a big cat. It's big cat behavior, and there have been panthers, right? Been like black panthers have been known to be in that area. Maybe the officials aren't divulging that. Maybe they're not. That's not something that's out in public. But I know that people have made those claims, certainly in those areas. So
Yes, so creepy, right? So I do
yeah.
agree with everything you said. There is, again, I guess I'm just trying to, how it is, just play healthy devil's advocate. Doesn't mean
Sure.
necessarily I fully subscribe to either side in
Yeah.
regards
Right.
of not, I really don't know what's going on down
Mhm.
there, like you
Mhm.
said, but I do know that there are, as like Jody and I were stating, some potential logical explanations for some of the things occurring for sure. But then in general, like you said, it is a definitely dark area with
Yeah.
historical references and aspects
Mhm.
of things that have
Mhm.
occurred. Yet I do
Yeah.
believe all across the United States that type of behavior unfortunately did
Yeah.
occur with the indigenous individuals.
Yeah.
And just, I know
Mhm.
Hockomock Swamp up here near the Bridgewater Triangle. Well, same
Yes.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's got a whole messed up
Mhm.
Native
Yeah.
American battle and
Yes.
war that's happened up in there, pushed out of their
Mhm.
land too. So it's
Mhm.
interesting because there is that dark history and nature all across the country, which could really delve into some of the more darker lores like the skinwalkers and maybe the
Yeah.
manifestations and such for sure, for sure. Yet
Right. Right.
there are, as you stated, black panthers being seen, there are hyenas being seen, and there's a high probability the short-faced bear is still kicking around, and
the dire wolf. I mean, there's the probability for all those as well, which would make it a actual living being too. So I think there's definitely a mixture of stuff that is
Yeah.
occurring for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
And it is something Jody brings up as well too about how hard it really ever will be to ever gain any more credence on the supposed LBL massacre, because it was so long ago now that most likely everyone is going to be deceased. And also people that would have came in to work on that case would have been coming in from all kinds of different counties, because it was such a small remote area at that point in time. They would not have had the proper officials to deal with something like that, meaning there would have been ER coming in from no different than around here. Okay, I live in Gorham, but doesn't just mean that if something terrible was happening, it would be all Gorham officials. You would have people that are volunteer firefighters there that could be coming down from Saco. You could have Saco EMT coming down too, more or less. So what I'm trying to say is, at this time frame, there would have been a ton of different officials coming in, maybe a sheriff from this jurisdiction, an official from this jurisdiction, people that are just trying to help out, that are volunteers. So there's so many different type of people that would have been there to actually ever 100% find anyone. If they ever were there, they're probably deceased now, unfortunately. And also it'd be dang near impossible because of how many people would have been on the supposed case.
Yeah. And even so, they didn't see. They still wouldn't have seen. I mean, I know what, they find at the, if you want to call it a crime scene, or the scene of this terrible, massacre supposedly. But they're still coming upon that. They didn't see how it, did anybody actually ever claim to have witnessed? I know there was one person, and I believe that most people feel that he's been discredited. And I have to say the same, but that's just my opinion based on listening anyway. But other than that, has there been anybody that have claimed to actually have witnessed?
That's such an excellent question, and I really do appreciate how you danced around that. But I have no problem saying, yeah, Roger, that just decided to pop out, and I've covered that before in one of my episodes, and I actually say his name because I have no problem saying that, because we are talking about facts here and police reports, etc., official reports, and he is not involved in any of those. So, and any of the deputies that Jody spoke to and others never referred to that. So yes, 100%. That's all. Boo. But no, besides that, no one saw anything in regards of an actual animal. If anyone saw anything, it was unfortunately the deceased little girl in the tree, the remains of the family, and blood everywhere, which people still need to understand. If a large cat or a bear gets inside of your camper, is that not going to just completely like shred you everywhere? I mean, it's going to look like it's not going to be pretty. It's not just going to be like, hey, Barb, Kenny, come here, hug me as I rip you to shreds. No. You're going to be grabbing the counter. You're going to be fighting it off. Blood's going to be spewing everywhere. Like, it's, of course that is. And no one can really verify whether there were claw marks inside or if the door was ripped off. You see what I'm saying? So that could just be hearsay, or the fish game where you caught a fish this big and you tell somebody around the circle, and by the time it gets back to you, it was a 25-foot great white, but you actually just caught a largemouth bass. You see what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
that's the big problem with that. But no one ever did see anything besides that, except for the interview I did send you that happened after this. But personally, if the LBL with anything, I think Glenn in that interview I sent you would be the best evidence to support if anything is occurring or did occur down in the LBL, because that actually was able to be verified by pay stubs that he worked for the Fish and Game Department. And this gentleman was, unfortunately, he is deceased now. He was down with cancer. This was like his confession to Jody. There is no anything from that, okay? This hasn't been reposted anywhere. His family, him, gained nothing off of this. He felt the need, because of the way it affected him, to sit down and speak as to what occurred, okay? So the odds of this not actually occurring are slim to none, because as I stated, what did this man gain from any of this? His family isn't talking about this anywhere. They don't want to talk about it. They just, okay, like he had been like threatened and etc. while he was still
active at the point in time this happened. So now, unfortunately, as he's saying, I'm going to be deceased. What can you do to me now? You can't. So that's why he felt the need to talk to us. And he had that gnarly encounter that I shared with you with the young couple that was attacked by what he said looked like an enormous hyena. And that to me, again, would be my go-to to speak about the LBL, because there's not questions kind of about it. Remember how you and I the other day were talking about like the Patty film? You know how there's just so many questions about it, good and bad? I feel like it's so hard to really bring that as a go-to. I'm not a Sasquatch person, but if I was, the Freeman footage would be my go-to, because there really is nothing negative or about, you see what I'm saying? There's really no in between.
Right.
So with the Glenn case, same thing. We're not talking about really like with the LBL massacre where there's so much pulling at the apples, like what is really occurring. You see what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of holes in the LBL massacre case, and there's also a lot supporting it. There's just so much where now it's almost like it's not worth really trying to use that as an example, because there's so many holes in it to support it or debunk it that it's not worth it. Whereas the Glenn case, there is nothing there to debunk. This is a man's death confession. We verified who he worked for. We verified when he worked there. And also, he had spoken to a couple other people like Barton Nunley, as well as Jody and some other respected individuals that heard what he had to say as well. So I just feel like that brings merit to it. And there's not really all these outside questions now. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because really, if I think that good witness statements that they're verified that they were there, that really has to hold a lot of weight. I mean, it does in our legal system, obviously. So, it definitely would hold a great amount of weight in making a decision, as far as what happened. So can you, maybe for the viewers, can you like just give a quick synopsis of what this gentleman said? I've heard, obviously, I'd heard it, but I don't know if they're all familiar with it, but I think it'd be good to, kind of add it in.
Yes, of course. Long story short is, so Glenn, I can't remember the exact date. If everyone wants to know the exact date, it's in the video again. I don't like to put out dates that I know I have the correct date, but in the video where we do his interview, you can check it out on my thread and the date's in there. But yeah, he worked for the Kentucky Fish and Game. And he stalked the LBL. So he didn't directly work for the LBL, but he just put fish and things into the lake.
Okay.
And he was out there one morning because he enjoyed going out early morning and just making sure fish were good and such and fishing. And well, he said he was out there. Everything was great. And as he came around the corner, he saw a young couple on the side of the shoreline. And they had seemingly come out because they heard his boat cruising by slowly. And he then realized he saw something large behind them. He couldn't tell what it was at this point in time, but it was a dark shadow that he saw move. And it looked like it kind of was crouching down like a large cat would. And as he got closer, he realized it looked like an enormous hyena or canine-ish like hyena with a large mane, which hyenas have, and it was crouched down, like I said, in the position like a cat, which is what hyenas kind of do when they lunge. And he said he then started screaming, trying to get their attention, but they thought he was just saying hello, so they were waving back, smiling, and he's screaming like, please, like, listen to me, and they didn't. And he said he had gotten close enough to really get a good look as to what happened. He said when this animal attacked him, it went 1-to-1 and literally just completely disposed of them in a absolutely horrendous way. And he said that he realized at this point in time there was absolutely nothing he could do for these people, and that he was too close to the shore for his own safety, and he really had nothing on him to protect him besides his fishing rod and what he was doing. So he sped off, and he said that there was never any reports or anything that went out. So then he began to kind of get the feeling that the people didn't, or the officials in the area didn't want him speaking about this. And then he started to get some random visits from people, even though he hadn't even spoken of anything. And they were just saying and asking him, hey, so what happened there? And basically being like, you didn't see anything. And if you like your pension and such, we really do suggest that, you kind of
forget what you saw there, etc. But then, he was, like I said, dying of cancer, and he
Oh,
just felt
yeah.
the need to tell us. But he said as it was happening that he, quote unquote, pissed his pants.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yep. Ugh. And that's not something, that's not something that somebody's just going to kind of come up with like, hey, this is great. This is what I did. But obviously, it's an indication of how affected he was. What a terrible thing to witness. Oh my gosh. Um, I thought that I had read that there were wolves in the LBL that are recognized. Do you know? Are you aware of that? And I want to say like, oh, what are they
So
like?
again, yes, you are so correct, and we do need to get you rolling here sooner than later. But that's another thing. Wolves have been reintroduced everywhere across the
Hmm.
United States for the most part, meaning even in northern Maine, where wolves haven't been for a while, they've been reintroduced. And those, yeah, people, I do think people are definitely seeing things. I cannot debunk any of that, but I do understand we do sometimes misidentify things. And one gentleman, for example, was doing a super cool Sasquatch documentary, which I do not suggest this. He loves going around all national parks by himself, and he even said himself that his family and friends don't encourage it and aren't the most thrilled that he does this, but he said he loves being intense all alone in the middle of nowhere. Well,
Hmm.
he went to, I believe, the original spot where the Gimlin was
Patterson
shot.
Gimlet. Hmm.
Yeah, so he was just
Bluff
up there
Creek.
hanging out, but he said because he was in the area and he was so excited, he had seen so many black bears in that area, and he kept thinking he was seeing Sasquatch running all
Oh,
around, but because he was excited to be there,
yeah.
and but they were actually black bears. And he said as he was driving, sure, you see that glimpse out of the side of your eyes
Yeah.
real quick, and you
Yeah.
think so. He
Yeah.
wasn't saying, he's like me, a healthy skeptic. He thinks the topic of Sasquatch is so cool and such, but he wasn't saying either and or did this happen. All he was saying is
Mhm.
that there are a ton of black bears in the area, and yes, people potentially have to be misidentifying things to an extent sometimes,
Mhm.
especially if he himself was, and he said he liked to consider himself a pretty solid outdoorsman that knew animals and had interactions with animals and could tell what they were. But he
Mhm.
said even at glimpses when you're going real quick or something's just jetting
Yes.
across the road, you
Yep.
don't fully have time to embrace
Right.
what you just saw. So your mind
Yeah.
is kind of piecing it together a little bit. So
Uh-huh. And
it,
it's trying to, put it in pigeonhole it almost like, oh, this is what I know, you know.
yes.
So,
So
yeah.
that is just sometimes what I encourage people to understand. Because I mean, wolves have big dang heads. I mean, if a
Mhm.
wolf was
Mhm.
looking in your window, yeah, it would have a big dang head. And I mean,
They're
dogs,
huge.
yes,
Yeah.
dogs and things do look in windows. And
Mhm.
here's an example: people supposedly there aren't mountain lions in Maine. Well, or
Mhm.
the Northeast. They've supposedly been eradicated. Well, recently there was one that was hit, and I believe it was upstate New York, that had come all the way from somewhere in the Midwest. And it was a male that was just pretty much looking to make its own territory. And same
Okay.
thing, when I was working 5 or 6 years ago at the Olive Garden, we saw what looked like a small mountain lion get hit too. And
Wow.
it could have again traveled like that, or it could have escaped from a refugee around here. I don't know, but I
Uh-huh.
just know that there are trail cam footages of where you can see it's a mountain lion and such around here. So again, it's not recognized as still being in existence, yet it is an animal. Animals travel around, and
Right. Mhm.
if it lived here at one point in time, why would they not come back to an area that they used to live in? So it is probable again that these people sometimes that are being attacked or when things are being found up in trees are large cats and such. I mean, again, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that cryptids aren't involved. I'm just saying
Right.
there
Right.
are logical reasonings
Mhm.
sometimes as to why somebody could have had their neck clawed out or
Mhm.
yeah, and here's a great one too for you. So the El Chupacabra, okay? Well, Forrest
Mhm.
Galante, who is one of my favorite people, is awesome, okay? He's been on the Joe Rogan show a ton and he has his own podcast called Wild Times Podcast. Well, he was talking about that potentially with the El Chupacabras is there were points in times where thylacines, okay, Tasmanian tigers were being carried around on boats and things, and their boats crashed there, and there's a high probability that they
Oh.
escaped and
Yeah,
actually
sure.
potentially were able to survive in that
Uh-huh.
area, and they look a ton like what people would be seeing in the chupacabra. So it's just interesting.
Mm. That's really interesting. Wow. Mm, cool.
Yeah, so super cool. But again, I appreciate you always taking time out of your busy schedule to
Of
pop in and hang out
course.
with us. And it's
Yeah,
always great.
I always love talking to you. Yeah, we just there's so much to talk about, and I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, and because this is a lot of this I'm not familiar with, but I do want to become more familiar with it. So yeah,
Well,
so
you
thank you
are
again.
definitely one of my consistent hosts on here, so we will always continue and just keep rolling. And actually, I will tonight after my next call here in an hour or so, I will be working on our previous video, so that will be coming out soon, which is pretty excellent. So it is definitely always a pleasure, and we will definitely have to figure out some more of this infamous Dogman material to plug
Yeah.
away at it because there's way too
Okay,
much of it.
great.
So.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, well, please like, subscribe, and share it. Make sure to feed the algorithm. And speaking of feeding, I am very hungry.